function. Okay, so I'll put up now the labels here. They have the corresponding annotations, but I can't wait for you to copy everything down. So, at the very minimum, please put the label beside the correct letter, or check what you did and make sure that your labels are accurate.
Oh, I actually got it correct.
Oh, sorry, side note. These bottom ones, GHIJ, are... GHIJ you do not need to know, except only HL needs to know. Okay? So GHIJ are all related to kidney. So SLs we don't do kidney, so you don't have to know them. But the ones that have annotations you need to know. Up to F, SLs at the very minimum you need to know those structures.
I actually got all of them correct.
But then GHIJ is not part of the sexual reproduction.
Right, it's part of the HL
Oh, wait,
excretion.
They don't need to like annotate too.
They might, yeah. Not you.
Wait, can we? Oh, wait. It says it says lining of the uterus. I wrote uterus lining.
That's
And
not.
it's do we have to use the endometrium or uterus?
I think uterine lining is okay. Should be okay. So, in terms of structure and their function, I don't think there's much new here. Okay. This is all the same stuff from before. So here we have our female reproductive system. Okay. Note that what they've shown here with the yellow part. So everything in yellow is urinary system. You don't need to know, right? So yellow, 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 yellow. So here they pushed this to the side. In real life, it wouldn't be to the side. It would be directly in front, right? Because here, this is the bladder, right? So the bladder sits right in front. If we were looking at this way, then it would block everything we want to try to find or try to look at. So they've just kind of moved it aside. And really what we're looking at is this section here. So here you have vagina, okay, which then at the top is the cervix, which is the sort of block, which is only open for a few days in the month. Here your uterus. Inside of this is the lining, which is going to thicken and narrow depending on this menstrual cycle, which we will see today. And then...
Why's the spine so odd?
That's how the spine is.
That's how the spine is.
Where's the
Yeah.
The what?
the hip bone? Or that?
The hip. Oh, it's not represented in this
I
thing.
mean, it would be on this side. Right? This is the pelvis, this bone here, the front pelvic bone.
There's a bone there. Is that like soft bone?
No, you just can't feel it. It's below some tissue. Look at how much fat and tissue is there. Okay?
Damn.
So function-wise, I think we're fairly straightforward. Uterus or the womb, right? This is where the fetus will develop. Fallopian tube, this is the one that's like not directly attached, but sort of covering the ovary, and where the ovulated egg will get swept into and then travel to the uterus. Ovary, of course, producing, like we said just today, producing the hormones, but also will develop the egg. Again, the second part of today we'll look at the menstrual cycle. Endometrium is the lining, so it's the inner part of the uterus which changes in thickness throughout the cycle. Vagina is where sperm is deposited during intercourse, and then also if there is a developing organism will be the birth canal, okay, and the cervix, which is the opening into the uterus. So between the vagina and the uterus you have the cervix. It's closed most of the time to protect if there's a fetus there, but it's open during a few days around the time of ovulation. Whoa, excuse me. Okay. Any questions about the functions? Again, later add some annotations to your diagram, because the questions will not just be labeled; they will potentially ask you what are the functions of given structures. Okay, so this might have to be done later on. Male system. Ready? Here we've added, compared to IG, we've probably added a couple of extra structures, okay, that we didn't see before. So check your answers first. That's a new one.
Seminal vesicle.
There's a couple of new ones for sure.
Wait, SL needs to know all of it?
Yes.
Okay. What?
Oh, I actually got the crib. I checked on the thing.
Epididymis.
What's D? Oh,
Penis.
Why is this not plugged in?
Oh, we want cold.
Oh, hot. Sometimes.
Wait, I thought it's only hot water if it's plugged in.
That's what?
It's only hot if it's plugged in, right?
Yeah, it's not been plugged in. I wanted hot. That was not. Yeah, that's
What's E? Oh yeah, prostate gland. It's that thing.
it's the gland.
Yeah.
It's another gland. Yeah.
another gland, which is a
How
little bit
about
different.
Neutralizes the vagina acids.
What the hell?
Hold on.
Wait, what? Actually?
Okay, so male system.
Wow.
Oh golly. Blam. So, let's do the stuff we already know. We know penis, okay? This is to help to deliver the semen, right? Hopefully to the top of the vagina so that it can have a good chance of entering the cervix and into the uterus, or to the top of the uterus or the fallopian tube, where they can fertilize an egg. That we are, I think, fairly clear on what that is. Then we know testes from this morning, producing sperm, also producing the testosterone hormone. Great. What else do we know? Urethra. So urethra is the tube that leads out of the penis itself. Something to note is the urethra will be the way that both urine and semen will be released. Okay, so it shares the duties, whereas in the female, the equivalent there would be two. So the bladder has the urethra for urine only, but then for reproduction and for birthing, there's a separate canal. The vagina is separate. Okay, so these are two different things, two different openings. Males both come out from the same place. Scrotum. Okay, this is just the covering, right? The protective covering for the testicles. Okay, and this is a sort of a dynamic tissue. It makes sure that the testicles are held at a optimum temperature. The sperm should be are healthiest when they're just a little bit lower than 37 degrees. So it's really important for them. That's why they're held outside of the body, and why they can be adjusted depending on temperature.
Raise or lower.
They can be raised or lowered depending on the environmental situation.
Yeah.
All right.
It was too hot.
I hate swimming.
Or when it's too cold, when you jump into the cold water, thump, right? We got to keep them warm so they come up towards the body.
She's the only one.
She said,
Too much
We
conversation.
have XXY on the show.
yeah. This
Why
is.
was Janaki?
She's here. She's listening.
Uh-oh. We have two.
So they'll be brought closer to the body to stay warm, or when it's hot, keep them away from the body and
Drop down.
drop down. Okay. All the wonders of
She's in
the
body.
male anatomy. Okay, then some new-ish stuff. We did talk last year about prostate gland and seminal vesicle. We mentioned them offhand. What are they there for? They're there to add some fluids and some nutrients and things like that to help the sperm on its journey, right? If we can see, and we should mention sperm duct. The better name is vas deferens. Fun name. Vas deferens is really the sperm tube. So it's the tube that comes from the testes and all the way around and joins with the urethra. So the vas deferens, you can see, passes by so you can see here seminal vesicle will add some stuff here. It passes by the prostate gland and picks up some stuff there, and then together with the sperm, so sperm plus the fluid from seminal vesicle plus the additions from prostate gland, all of that together is called semen. Right? That's the fluid containing the sperm inside of it. And that will be ejaculated. What have we missed? Epididymis. Very fun word to say, epididymis. This is this like squiggly, weird sort of line that's on top of the testicle, and it's kind of like a storage place for the sperm that have been produced. So if they're made here, they will be housed here until there's an event for ejaculation.
I was going to say, what if the storage is up?
It's funny, that's you. That question.
Close your ears. This is
The storage is up.
fun topic for.
No, but it's weird. It's weird that you asked that. No, it's not weird that you asked that, but they also asked the same thing.
Do we just need our own like absorb our own like?
So I don't. Okay, so here's again. This is theorizing. I don't know that this is a fact, but I think that because sperm are made so often, like with such rapidity, right? Like every second you make like 1,000 new
Oh
sperm.
wow, 2,000,
Yeah,
3,000.
a lot. Okay, a lot of sperm are made as you're just sitting here, as we are just sitting here.
Jensen told the quality. A lot.
How many sperm did you make? A lot. Oh, okay. So I think because of that, I think sperm's lifespan, maybe, essentially they will also, there's just cells, right? They're just cells like any other cells. So older cells will die and be replaced. So I think there's no like, I know what you're imagining is like, it's like, is there a like bursting point? Is there like a point where it just like your epididymis explodes? No. No, that doesn't happen. I believe you will just like, they will die and break down and then, you know, just like any other cells, dead cells get replaced and repaired.
We eat our own babies.
This is
Kinda, half of
it. Yeah. So, no.
Basically, yes and no.
Okay. So, good. Structures, functions. Great. The whole point, obviously, is for that, what we saw, HL, we saw internal fertilization.
Oh, is it the? I remember last time you said the sperm travel up the vas deferens by muscle contraction. Is it?
Yes, they travel out by
Pressure.
Paralysis.
peristalsis.
Okay.
Peristalsis.
Paralysis.
Yes, pressure might, no, not exactly pressure. But yes, there's a very strong muscle contractions all the way through.
Pressure, like what? Like water.
Okay, no problem? No problem.
Yes.
Okay, today's main goal is menstrual cycle. Hey, you guys got your chance. Okay?
No, this is the thing I always learn and always forget. This is
And I
not
always
applicable.
start to guess.
Not
Empathy.
Not applicable.
Well, the fact of the matter is, without the menstrual cycle, none of us would be here, right? So it is crucial for life. What is the purpose? Why does the menstrual? I made the same joke in the last class, but why does the menstrual cycle exist? Not like why does this exist? Like I hate this. No, that's not the question I'm asking. Biologically, why does it exist?
To
Prepare to
have a baby.
have a baby.
Essentially, yeah, to prepare for birth, right? Not to prepare for birth, to prepare for
Fertilization.
fertilization. Not even for yes, fertilization is part of it, and also what's the next part after fertilization?
Incubation.
Close.
Insertion.
No, that's before.
Hello.
Hello?
You're close.
Into the lining thing.
Yeah. You're close.
Implementation.
I was gonna say improv just now.
Plantation.
Implantation.
Oh.
You're close. Implantation. Yeah. So good. So the preparation is for fertilization because it prepares one mature egg, and also it gets the lining ready for implantation. What was the first thing you said? Not insertion.
Incubation.
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 I mean, you had the I right
Oh, close enough.
and the shun right. You had the
The incubator is the
parts around.
box.
I know.
You dump your baby.
Not your face.
Dump your baby.
A bit too early.
And then it will grow.
No.
No. I mean, it's like a
Homeostasis machine.
yeah. It's just imagine it like a petri dish, and you put your stuff right there, and so powerful.
Not quite, but anyway. Okay, so our goal today, or for this lesson, is to look at these 4 hormones and their roles in the menstrual cycle. You will see on your handout that you have. I'm going to borrow one. Okay. This will be your goal. This will be part of sort of your homework at the end. Okay. To fill that flowchart out, but we're going to follow along with this. I need to find this. I forgot what this top A section is even about. But B, C, D, E. Okay, these 4 things. These are a graph that's going to help us, and you can use that to follow along. It's going to help us track what happens with the 4 hormones. So there's 2 produced by the pituitary in red here, 2 produced by the ovaries in blue. And we're going to track their roles and their concentrations throughout the menstrual cycle. We're also going to match them with what happens in the ovary, which is letter C, right? And what happens in the endometrium, which is letter E. And what we'll see is, I'm just going to move ahead for 1 second. What we'll see is like this chart it's actually a graph. So on the bottom you have time in days. And what happens at every moment, like in vertical slices, happens at the same time for all 4 of these different things. So whatever happens at day 4 for the pituitary hormones, we can match it with what happens in the ovary, with what happens in the ovarian hormones, with what happens in the endometrium. Okay, so you can read it like that up and down. I wonder.
Can you go back a slide?
I wonder who. It's okay. So we're gonna have like individual slides. I'm pretty sure.
All right, hold on a second, Janaki. I'm going to try something here and move you to see if you'll be able to see us.
Two. All stem
Do
complete.
that. Take this out. Then
How many records are?
Chinese like Chinese A.
Okay.
卷一张，
It's Jin.
这个我
No. I'm not.
this may not be the time to be doing this stuff.
14 out of 20.
I mean for items.
一张 fuck on 5.
5. Wait, so you're bilingual?
No? Wait, yeah. All of us are bilingual.
No, we're not.
No, you got B in there.
We're B Chinese, A English.
You need both of them, right?
Oh.
I don't understand. You get B here.
Sorry.
You use BHO because you want 7, not because it's your bad.
No, BH is not easy.
That's a good joke.
I want to say 7 in that class. I'm not sure if it's hard.
I'm pretty sure that's how it works.
Oh, that might be better. Except I don't know about audio wise. Oh shoot. Now. And like this.
Who's the best judge Chinese students in the class.
正常语啊。
你觉得正常语中文好吗？
Please，他不是 local。Oh no no don't please I don't mean it.
What?
No, he
He's definitely sure.
gets separated himself when he gets
He has given sins. He has given his sins. Look at him in class. Placing uniforms while answering questions.
really?
Yeah. Just not your friend.
How does that look? That looks okay, kind of.
Wait,
This way you'll at least be able to see me.
The screen does not work.
Who's your class?
Let's
Me,
try.
Jenny,
Are you still there?
Victor.
Victor, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, turn you up there.
Oh.
Oh. Bam. Okay. Hopefully this will be a little bit better.
我还问你，
Huh? Williams ASL?
All right, people. So let's go back for a second. Just one more thing to show you is these two hormones mainly are HL only, the ones below this line. We're going to briefly mention HCG, but mostly those are going to be for HL students. So for us, these four, which we are pretty familiar with from last year. Okay. So if you're ready, we're going to start the menstrual cycle. Okay. We're going to start here. Okay. The important thing for us is what hormones actually do. Okay. What is their role? How do they affect the ovary? How do they affect the endometrium lining? Okay. So we'll start. We have to pick some place to start because it's a cycle. There's not really a natural starting point. So we just pick a place. So we start. We call this like sort of day 0 or like from the beginning. The first hormone we're going to mention is FSH. And again, the other class asked, like, do we have to know the name, follicle stimulating hormone? I recommend that you do because it straight up tells you what that hormone does, right? So follicle stimulating hormone, what does it do? It stimulates follicles. What is a follicle? It's an immature egg, right? It's the precursor to an egg. So it starts, FSH starts the process of maturing this follicle into what can be an egg that can be fertilized. Okay? So that's released from the pituitary gland, and then its target will be the ovary itself. Okay? Another function of FSH is it's going to start or help to sort of increase estrogen levels. All right. Now, FSH and estrogen sort of have a weird relationship. Okay. At first, FSH and estrogen have a positive feedback relationship, meaning FSH tells the ovary to produce more estrogen. Then the additional estrogen is going to go to the pituitary and say produce more FSH. And then FSH, more estrogen, estrogen, more FSH, estrogen. So more of both. Okay? So each one is like antagonizing the other one.
Wait, so FSH is producing the glands and they go down. And
Yeah, pituitary to ovary to pituitary to
then,
ovary.
which one is in the ovary that goes up?
Estrogen.
Oh, okay.
So they're kind of like they're like siblings who are like annoying each other, right? It's like it keeps like escalating. Like, shut up! You shut up! You shut up! You shut up!
No longer. No, you.
And they each keep like increasing until they freak out.
Then your mom comes in.
And then your mom comes.
She's lost.
And then she's the project.
She just beats you.
Wait, is it?
You both shut up.
No, you shut up.
They both turn to the mom.
And then like, the mom was like, wait, what?
Uh-oh, I'm outnumbered. So this is an example of positive feedback, right? Positive means nothing is being turned off. In fact, this turns this one on, which turns this one on, which turns that one on again, which turns that one on again, and it's like spiraling.
Well,
out
one
of-
breaks on, right?
What?
If it doesn't break on, it's just filled with those two.
Breakdown is different than stimulating. So like,
But if both of them are increasing at the same time, doesn't that just
Yeah, I mean they will eventually break down.
yeah.
But give it a second. So watch what happens in the next point. So that's number one. So the first thing is to mature the follicle. Okay. Now that estrogen that's produced, what is its job? It's going to start the thickening of the endometrium lining. Right. It's going to help to start building the wall of the uterus. Okay. And at a certain point, the FSH is like the younger sibling that gives up after the older sibling gets like too loud and mean. So at some point, estrogen gets to a high enough concentration that instead of promoting more FSH, it inhibits FSH. Right? So it's like, shut up, you shut up, you shut up, no, you shut up. Okay.
Wait, so
We took it to.
this thing does both promote and inhibit.
Yeah, it promotes at a level, and then when it comes to a certain concentration, it starts to inhibit the other one.
What?
So estrogen gets to a certain concentration, yes, and then it changes how it interacts with FSH. And you can see that in the graph. So if we look at the lines, so FSH is on the letter B, it's the lower line that only has a little tiny blip, right? This one here.
FSH.
Yeah, FSH. Number 3, it has like an arrow that says number 3, I guess. Okay? And then estrogen is this one that has the darker line in letter D. You should probably write those down. That has a big bump just before the dotted line. So you can see that FSH doesn't really it increases but not that much, and then actually tails, it's slight increase, but then ends up traveling downwards as it heads towards that dotted line. While estrogen just continues to rise up. Okay? Let me go back to here. The one on this screen is not the best, but here. Actually, this one is better than the one you have. So here, follicle stimulating hormone, right? It's slightly increasing and then starts to drop as estrogen starts to rise, right? We can see that this matches up a little bit here. Right? There's drops in FSH while estrogen starts to rise.
Wait, I'm confused. You said it does promote at low levels, but it's dropping.
To here, here, and here, this promotes this. But then estrogen look how estrogen is rising up, and at that same time, follicle stimulating hormone drops down. Okay, so it's not that much of a difference that causes the inhibition.
It's just there to keep it going.
It's there to get it started, essentially.
Okay.
Okay. Whoa. Okay, so then it flips to negative feedback, right? So now it's negative feedback. Okay, that's 2 of the hormones. Third hormone, luteinizing hormone, LH. That's the one with the big spike. Okay, at the top. Also pituitary hormone. This one, we stick to what we know from IG. Its main job is to release the mature egg cell, right, for ovulation. And this happens right around the midpoint of the menstrual cycle. Okay, so big spike of LH in the middle of the menstrual cycle. That is what's going to release the ovum, the mature ovum here, right, in ovulation. And the last one that's left is progesterone. Okay, progesterone, the role is what?
Break down the lining.
Opposite.
Build up the line.
Maintain the lining.
Maintain the lining. Build up and maintain the lining, yes. Maintains the uterus lining. So if the estrogen starts the building, progesterone continues the building and keeps it that way. Okay? Where is progesterone secreted? It's secreted from the corpus luteum. This is another term, a good term to know.
It's the follicle.
It's
right?
the leftover.
Yes, exactly. It's a leftover, what's left behind after ovulation. So here we follow this diagram around the horn like this. So it starts as a follicle, mature, mature, ovulation, ping, and then the egg leaves and enters the fallopian tube. But what's sort of the wrapping that was around it gets left behind? This is the corpus luteum, right? And that is going to produce progesterone.
So which thing breaks? Wait, which one's the progesterone in the graph? This one, right?
The one with the, it's the letter D, what, D? A, B, C, D?
This one.
And the line, the lower line that has a big bump towards the end of it. And one important thing about progesterone is, as progesterone levels increase, they inhibit the two pituitary hormones. So they inhibit FSH and LH. Because at that point, what don't you want to do?
More eggs to be released.
Exactly. You don't want more eggs being matured. One has already been matured. We're waiting. The lining is ready. There's no point in making another egg.
What was it? There's a limit amount since a woman's birth already. How much was that again?
I don't remember the exact number.
Must be thousands. Wait, what?
No, it's not that.
It's in-
I remember it's 2 something.
Wait,
I just can't remember.
monthly?
2,000 or 200. Can't remember.
Should be 2,000 because it happens monthly. Right?
And then
It
you
happens
get-
monthly, but some also don't end up maturing, right?
So you can donate some.
See if we can look it up. How many eggs is a woman born with? So that's a good point. So we said first that the testes produce testosterone, sperm, at like a rate of some 1,000 every second. But a female's eggs, or the follicles, in fetal development, once the ovaries are formed in the baby, the number of follicles you have is already there. So however many follicles you'll have in your life, you are born with them. You are born with them. You guys were born with them.
Infinite.
I'm pointing at Jackie and Jenny here. You're born with those eggs, and it's a limited amount. You're right. I don't know if it was 2,000, maybe
Where's
But it's
2,000?
200 and then monthly. Wait, 200.
200. That's not enough, right? Because you
200
need
divided-
12 every year,
Yeah.
from puberty to around 65-ish.
That means it's like
Yeah,
a
calculate
50
too.
a 50 year.
50 years times 12.
Oh,
is-
then this is not good. 200 is not
more.
yeah.
Maybe like 1,000 then?
Something
Yes.
2.
Look it up. See if you can find it.
我们的专家快点。
应该是我不是想找这个变态。
But so what we were saying in the other class was, so like every egg that you release, right? Like that is the potential offspring, right? Potential chance for reproduction. So every menstrual cycle after it ends is a wasted egg.
We can sell that.
If you want to think of it that way.
But we can
and-
sell it, right?
And then we talked about
Wait,
donating.
hold on.
Then we talked about donating eggs, right? So there is a market that exists for egg donation.
Imagine you're just flushing money down the drain every time.
I mean,
That's 10.
yeah.
Okay.
I think the process is not. It's not like you just rock up to the place and be like, "Yo, need eggs? I got eggs."
I got some.
Right? I think if that were the case, I feel like a lot more people would be doing it. So there must be something that makes it more complicated than that.
I'm not selling.
But the other class did look it up. They Googled it. They
Isn't
said one egg can be, depending on, you know,
Isn't
it
factors.
$1,000 or something?
No, they said 14,000 USD.
One.
14,000.
Yeah.
Dude, that's like a fortune. And you take that times 12. Or that's the year.
Wheels are turning.
What
I almost got money for like 10.
Then the opposite is like we didn't look it up, but someone should look up how much can you make
The
at a
cost is
sperm bank. You probably get like $5.
Yeah,
$0.05.
I think.
It's not much.
It's 100 for like a gallon or something.
It's 100.
Per gallon.
It's
168.
How are you gonna store that
Yeah,
gallon?
14,000? Oh no, wait, a year.
You just
If you
go
donate
to the-
one,
to the
If you
cell
donate
phone,
12
gallon
eggs.
of- Yo,
$168,000.
see.
Whoa, that's like your.
this is like an NBA minimum contract.
That's like your whole university
Yeah.
tuition
Oh.
times 2.
I mean,
No,
In a
no,
month.
no, no.
In a
5
month.
years of university.
that's a lot of money.
Let's if we have time, let's look into it, okay? All right, let's finish it off here.
Life is fair. All
So-
the people university you're in.
If we link this all to feedback, okay? So we have mostly negative feedback, right? When some things are produced, they inhibit other things, which is really important because we don't want to overproduce eggs. We don't want to produce them when they're not needed. However, we mentioned that one example of positive feedback right at the beginning where estrogen and FSH kind of egg each other on. Oh, that's a bad pun. They egg each other on.
Oh.
But then also later, some of the estrogen is going. The increase in estrogen causes the spike in LH. So there's a relationship there as well. So rising estrogen causes rising LH until they both sort of peak at the same time, and then bam, ovulation takes place. Egg sales.
That's a lot of money.可以卖很多钱，有钱，电脑的钱都会赚回来。哎，像我们这种只值5毛钱的那种，哎，What do you mean？
No, I don't need anything.
嗯
Wait, didn't you take econ last year?
Yeah.
Is it demand for
What?
demand and supply? We must supply for the
It's like Handmaid's Tale.
Oh,
It's the same as Handmaid's Tale,
oh no,
right?
that book.
That book is really interesting, actually. Don't
It
wanna-
is really interesting. It's the same idea as what you're saying, except instead of selling the egg, you actually use the whole woman.
You use the full potential.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Day to what?
And also they don't get paid.
Yeah.
They don't have that at the what 1600 then. 160,000 Damn.
Right.
That's
So
more than one kitten.
let's do a couple of things.
No.
Let's now I'm interested. I want to know the costs or the prices that are associated with this.
Research man.
Oh no, no.
Just to finish off explaining the sections of the menstrual cycle, right? We'll go back to the map that you have there, and we'll just talk about the lining of the uterine wall. Okay?
Not.
Oh shoot. Not the what am I trying to say?
What, this one? The MRT, the train station one.
This thing.
Shanghai.
Not that yet.
Wait, what?
So just to match things up, I just want to go through this. So, follicle stimulating hormone, boom. Mature the egg. So we see in the ovary, here's the little follicle that starts to mature. At the same time, what's happening in the endometrium? This is the point where we would call it the period, right? The menstruation. So that's the it's not bleeding, okay? It's just the breakdown of the wall, which is coming out.
Is
the-
it protein?
It's everything.
Yeah.
It's everything. It's tissue that's being broken down. There's blood because there are blood vessels throughout this whole thing, right? So it breaks down and is released so that we can start again. So the thickened part gets thinner. So that's what's happening at the sort of start/end, right? They're sort of overlapping. Then blah, 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 blah. Maturing. Slowly estrogen is rising. Notice the matching of these two, right? So estrogen peaks, which leads to a spike in LH. Bam. The egg comes out. What's left behind? Corpus luteum. Corpus luteum starts to produce progesterone. There's my bump in progesterone. And progesterone inhibits and keeps these two low. So we don't get any more follicles. The egg, the ovum, is going to go to the fallopian tube and start moving towards the uterus.
Well, there's 2 ovaries, right? So
Yes.
This is
If
one,
one-
and then
We have to look that up also. Okay, well, let's put each person on something because the other class also asked this question.
How do you say
Why
that?
does only one side do it? Do they alternate like 1 month, 1 month, 1 month, 1 month? We couldn't find a
Well, this-
clear answer. They don't do 2. I know that for sure. Otherwise, then everyone would have twins all the time.
Yeah, that's pretty
maybe
cool.
it's a chance thing.
That's pretty cool.
Wait, but twin? I thought twin is like it divides.
That's what I'm saying. But if every
It's not
month the female released 1 from each side, then every time there was intercourse, both eggs would get fertilized, right? There's 300 million.
But that means it's
sperm.
not age 65 anymore. It's 30 something.
Oh.
Maybe,
Divide
maybe.
by 2.
Okay, and then of course it breaks down only if there's no implantation. If it implants, we want to keep this thickened, so we keep progesterone high. This is done by
Progesterone.
SHCG, something that we don't need to know in ESO.
Oh, we did learn it last year.
You did learn it last year. It
What's-
rescues the corpus luteum.
Wait,
Wait.
what
Oh,
like breaks
this-
down the
Oh, when you fertilize.
the endometrium?
What breaks down?
Yeah.
Just the lack of progesterone, right? Progesterone
Oh,
levels
corpus.
drop. Corpus luteum disappears. It breaks down. It has only a limited lifespan.
Oh, okay.
Right? So after this starts to break down, it can't produce progesterone. If there's no progesterone, this starts to drop off. Okay. So this needs progesterone. Progesterone is produced by this. If this goes away, which means this goes away.
Is there a thing that limits progesterone? Like inhibits?
Pills.
Don't remember.
The pill, contraceptive pill, actually we mentioned it here. Contraceptive pill is made of progesterone and estrogen. Why would that be?
Will
Progesterone.
inhibit LH and FSH.
Which is going to prevent what?
Ovulation.
Ovulation. Right? So contraceptive pill, the birth control pill, right? So women will go on the birth control pill. Very, very commonly used. In young women who don't want to get pregnant, but they want to enjoy the single life, or their relationship, and not worry about having the risk of getting pregnant. Of course, that is not to say that the pill does not protect you from sexually transmitted diseases, right? So, protected sex is still recommended to prevent, blood to blood, skin to skin, body fluid contact, because though you can't get pregnant, you can still get HIV, any STI, right? Gonorrhea, all these other things. This doesn't prevent against that, just pregnancy. Okay, so let's pause there. This is what you should try to fill out if you don't know the answers. They're on the PPT, but try to see if you can figure out what stimulates what to do what. Okay? As a
Okay.
summary.
Let's go.
Ah, I don't know the answer.
Oh, I
At the
already know the
same
first
time,
Use pencil.
what are all the things that we want to look up? We want to look up the ovary question. Ovary, which side? Then sperm versus egg
Is that LH?
costs.
LH.
Sure about that.
What else were we curious about?
Where should we start with this?
I would start with
Tell us which
Probably
one is
your easy-
FSH.
probably your easiest one is up at the very top. What stimulates ovulation?
LH.
Yeah.
Which one? So which one? Oh, wait, what?
Estrogen stimulates LH and stimulates the uterus wall. But wrong thing.
这是果然是专家。Professor Johnson.
什么？
Nothing.